You're not unlucky in love. You're drawn to what's familiar. There's a pattern in your relationships that repeats itself with disturbing accuracy. Different faces, different names, different circumstances, but the same emotional dynamic, the same disappointment, the same pain. You tell yourself, it's coincidence, bad timing, that you just haven't met the right person yet. But somewhere beneath that explanation, you know the truth. You're not randomly encountering these people. You're choosing them. And you're choosing them for a reason you don't fully understand. We return to what hurt us until we understand it. Jung recognized this as repetition compulsion. The psyche's unconscious drive to recreate unresolved emotional experiences from the past. Not because it wants to hurt you, but because it's trying to master something it couldn't master the first time. When you were young, you learned what love looks like, not from books or movies, from the people who raised you, from the emotional atmosphere you grew up in, from the ways you were seen, held, or abandoned. And those early experiences created a template, a blueprint for what connection feels like, for what you can expect from others, for what you believe you deserve. That blueprint lives in your unconscious, and it shapes every relationship you enter, often in ways you can't see until the pattern has already repeated itself. The psyche doesn't distinguish between healthy and unhealthy when it comes to familiarity. It only recognizes what it knows. And what it knows feels safe, even when it's destructive. This is why familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar peace. Because pain that matches your childhood makes sense to your nervous system. It confirms what you already believe about yourself, about others, about how relationships work. It's predictable. And the psyche craves predictability more than it craves happiness. But peace? Peace feels foreign, unsettling, like something's missing, like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. And when someone offers you that peace, when someone is consistent and available and treats you well, your unconscious sounds an alarm. This doesn't feel like love. This feels wrong. So you pull away, or you sabotage, or you find reasons why they're not right for you, and you gravitate back toward what hurts, because at least that hurt is familiar. Let's be precise about what we're talking about. This isn't about conscious choice. You're not deliberately seeking out people who will harm you. You're not aware that you're doing it at all. What's happening is far more subtle and far more powerful. Your unconscious is scanning for emotional signatures that match your early attachment experiences. It's looking for the specific kind of distance, inconsistency, or emotional unavailability that you learned to associate with connection. And when it finds that signature, it lights up. It says, "This is it. This is what love feels like." You experience this as chemistry, as an intense magnetic pull, as a feeling of finally meeting someone who understands you. But what you're actually experiencing is recognition. Your psyche recognizing an old wound wearing a new face. Jung called these childhood imprints. They're the emotional patterns that get encoded in early relationships and then project forward into adult life. They operate like invisible filters, shaping what you perceive as attractive, what you dismiss as boring, and who you allow close. If you grew up with a parent who was emotionally unpredictable, you'll be drawn to partners who are emotionally unpredictable, not because you consciously want that, but because your nervous system learned to equate love with emotional chaos. If you grew up feeling like you had to earn affection, you'll be drawn to partners who make you work for their attention. Partners who are hot and cold, who withhold and then reward, who keep you in a constant state of proving yourself. Because that's what love felt like to you as a child, conditional, uncertain, something you had to chase. And when someone offers you love that doesn't require chasing, your psyche doesn't recognize it as love at all. This is the trap. The pattern doesn't feel like a pattern. It feels like preference, like chemistry, like fate. And that's exactly why it's so hard to break. Let's make this concrete, because this doesn't happen in abstract psychological theory. It happens in your actual life, in choices that seem right until you're 6 months in and realizing you're in the same relationship you swore you'd never enter again. You meet someone, they're charismatic, interesting, a little hard to read. They give you attention, but not too much. They're available, but only on their terms. They're affectionate, but inconsistent. And something in you lights up. You tell yourself this person is different. They're complex, misunderstood. They've been hurt before, so they're guarded. But you can see who they really are. You can see their potential, so you invest. You pursue, you make yourself available. You accommodate their schedule, their moods, their emotional distance. You tell yourself that if you're patient enough, understanding enough, loving enough, they'll open up. They'll meet you. They'll choose you. And sometimes they do, in moments, late-night conversations, sudden bursts of affection, promises that things will be different. But then they pull back. They go cold. They disappear for days without explanation, and you're left wondering what you did wrong, what you could do differently, how you can get back to those moments when they were actually present. This becomes your relationship. Chasing breadcrumbs, living for the moments when they show up, convincing yourself that the inconsistency is temporary, that once they heal, once they trust you, once the timing is right, everything will change. But it doesn't change, because the pattern isn't about them, it's about you. You chose them because they fit the template. And the template says, love is something you have to earn. Connection is something you have to fight for. Affection is conditional and unpredictable. And until you change the template, you'll keep choosing people who confirm it. Here's what makes this pattern so insidious. You're not just attracted to emotionally unavailable people. You're repelled by emotionally available ones. Someone shows up consistently. They're boring, predictable, not exciting enough. Someone communicates clearly. They're too easy. There's no mystery, no challenge. Someone treats you well from the beginning. Something must be wrong with them. They must be hiding something, or they're just not that interesting. Your psyche has 1,000 reasons to dismiss people who would actually be good for you, because those people don't match the pattern. They don't activate the wound, and the wound is what your unconscious is trying to heal. But here's the problem. You can't heal a wound by recreating it. You can only deepen it. Every time you choose someone who's emotionally unavailable, you reinforce the belief that you're not worthy of consistent love. Every time you chase someone who won't meet you, you confirm the story that you have to work for affection. Every time you accept less than you deserve, you tell your psyche, this is all we're worth. And the pattern continues. This is the moment that terrifies people. The moment when they start seeing their patterns clearly. when they can no longer pretend it's just bad luck or poor timing, when they have to face the truth that they've been choosing this over and over, in relationship after relationship. And underneath that truth is a more painful one. You've been choosing this because some part of you believes this is what you deserve. That belief didn't come from nowhere. It came from childhood, from the ways you were treated, seen, or ignored, from the love you didn't receive or the love you received conditionally. And it's been running your relationship choices ever since. Most people, when they reach this point, feel shame. They feel broken. They wonder why they can't just choose better, why they keep gravitating toward pain when they consciously want peace. But shame keeps you stuck. It keeps the pattern invisible. It keeps you from seeing that this isn't a moral failing. It's a psychological wound. This is the shift, the moment you stop seeing the pattern as fate and start seeing it as information. The pattern is showing you where you're still wounded, where you still believe you're not enough, where you're still trying to earn the love you should have received freely as a child. It's not punishing you, it's pointing you toward what needs to be healed. And the healing doesn't come from finding the right person. It comes from changing your relationship with yourself. Because the truth is, you can't choose differently until you become different, until you update the template, until you teach your nervous system that love doesn't have to hurt to be real. This doesn't happen overnight. It happens in small, deliberate choices that feel uncomfortable at first. It happens when you notice the pull toward someone who's emotionally unavailable and you pause instead of pursuing. When you feel that familiar chemistry and you ask yourself, is this actually chemistry? Or is this recognition of an old wound? It happens when someone treats you well, and instead of dismissing them as boring, you sit with the discomfort of unfamiliar peace. You let yourself experience what it feels like to be met, to be chosen, to not have to fight for attention. It feels wrong at first, flat, like something's missing, because your nervous system is waiting for the chaos it learned to associate with love. But you stay anyway. You let your body learn a new pattern. You teach your psyche that safety isn't the same as boredom, that consistency isn't the same as lack of passion, that being chosen doesn't mean something's wrong. This is the work, not finding someone who will finally love you right, but becoming someone who recognizes love when it's actually present. And that means facing the parts of yourself that don't believe you're worthy of it. You have to go back to the original wound, not to relive it, but to see it clearly, to understand what you learned about love and connection when you were too young to question it. Maybe you learned that love is conditional, that you had to perform, achieve, or behave a certain way to receive affection. So now you're drawn to partners who make you prove yourself, who keep you working for their approval. Maybe you learned that people leave. That attachment is dangerous. That getting close means getting hurt. So now you're drawn to partners who are already halfway out the door, who keep you at arm's length, who confirm that closeness is unsafe. Maybe you learned that your needs don't matter, that asking for what you want is selfish or needy. So now you're drawn to partners who can't meet your needs, who make you feel small for having them, who reinforce the belief that you're too much or not enough. These beliefs are old. They made sense once, given the environment you were in. but they're not true anymore. And they're keeping you trapped in relationships that hurt you. The work is to see those beliefs clearly, to recognize them as learned, not inherent, to understand that the template you're operating from was built in childhood, and you have the power to rebuild it as an adult. This doesn't mean denying your past or pretending it didn't shape you. It means acknowledging it and choosing not to let it dictate your future. You start by setting different standards, not just for who you'll date, but for how you'll let yourself be treated. You stop accepting inconsistency. You stop making excuses for people who don't show up. You stop convincing yourself that emotional unavailability is depth or mystery. You start paying attention to behavior, not potential, to how someone makes you feel, not who you hope they'll become. And when you feel that pull toward someone who fits the old pattern, you recognize it. You name it. You say, "This is familiar." But familiar doesn't mean right. And you choose differently, not because you've stopped being attracted to those people, but because you've developed something stronger than attraction: discernment, self-respect, a nervous system that's learning what healthy connection actually feels like. This is how the pattern breaks. Not dramatically, not all at once, but gradually, through repeated choices that prioritize your well-being over your wounds. And something shifts in you. You stop needing to chase. You stop needing to prove yourself. You stop needing to fix or save or convince someone to love you. You start expecting to be met, to be chosen, to be loved without having to earn it. And when someone can't offer you that, you don't try to make it work. You just walk away, not with anger, not with bitterness, just with clarity. This person isn't capable of meeting me, and I'm no longer interested in relationships where I have to fight for scraps of affection. That's integration. That's healing. That's what it means to break the repetition compulsion and choose from wholeness instead of woundedness. Jung believed the psyche is always trying to complete itself, that the patterns we repeat are the psyche's attempt to master what it couldn't master in childhood. But you can't master a childhood wound by recreating it in adulthood. You can only master it by facing it directly, by grieving what you didn't receive, by acknowledging the pain, and by refusing to perpetuate it. When you do that, when you stop choosing people who hurt you and start choosing people who meet you, something profound happens. You stop confusing intensity with intimacy. You stop confusing chaos with chemistry. You stop confusing the familiar ache of abandonment with love. And you start recognizing what real connection feels like: steady, present, safe, not boring, not lacking passion. Just free from the exhausting cycle of pursuit and withdrawal that's been defining your relationships for years. The pattern doesn't control you anymore. You see it coming. You recognize the pull. And you choose differently, not because you've found the perfect person, but because you've become someone who won't settle for relationships that require you to abandon yourself. Not everyone who feels familiar is meant for your future.